Stay tuned because we're talking to a family law special master next on Fathers Are Parents Too. Welcome to Fathers Are Parents Too. We're here with Laurie Williams, and she is a family law special master in Northern California. Welcome, Laurie.
Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for being on the show. What is a special master?
Well, in my case, a special master is a mental health professional, either a marriage and family counselor or a licensed social worker or a psychologist who actually winds up acting as a judge for custody and visitation issues.
So acting as a judge, does that mean that if people have to go to court instead of going to the regular judge, they go to you, or?
Yes, that's kind of the way it works.
Okay, and so how would you differ then from a judge? Why would someone go to you instead of just going to the judge?
Well, for one thing, one of the things that we can provide that a judge can't is continuing and more regular contact with the people. So most of the times we'll stay with a case for a year, 2 years, 3 years, or even longer, so that we get to know the families, we get to know the people. We're not just dealing with them when they come in with, 30 other people during the day.
So you're actually their own personal judge,
yes,
basically.
Their own personal judge.
Wow, and so what sorts of things does that mean you get more involved and are able to get more involved than a regular? Because I know that in court, before a normal judge, before a typical judge who's appointed to the bench, you go in there and they have maybe 5 minutes for you. They have no idea what the history of the case is, and they're required to make these split-second decisions, just sort of, I'd say by the seat of their pants, but often it seems that way.
Right.
Obviously, if you are with the family for several years, you would have some idea. So do you get more involved in more in depth into the issues then?
I usually get very involved. I mean, all of us do this differently, but in my case, I generally meet with the parents. I'll get to know the children. I often do home visits just to get to know how everybody interacts, and then just sit and watch, try to deal with issues that come up, try to help them learn how to handle their own issues, and then make judgments if I need to.
Okay, if you need to. So that sounds like it's just one part, then acting as a judge is just one part of
It
it.
is just one part.
It almost sounds, if you're going to the home and you're getting involved to that degree, that as if you're almost micromanaging these issues for people then. Is that what happens? Do you sort of make every decision for them?
Oh, heavens, I hope not. No, I try to set it up so that they make as many decisions on their own as they can.
Okay.
I'd rather have them come less frequently than more frequently.
Okay.
In the beginning, when I'm getting to know a family, I get pretty involved. But then as time goes on, I would hope that they only call me when the issues arise that they just absolutely cannot deal with. And of course, it depends on who the family is. I mean, some of the families I'm obviously more involved than others.
So now you say they call you, so that would be different than a sitting judge as well then, because for a family to get before a judge, they have to go through a hearing usually or something like that. This sounds a bit more informal.
Right.
Are you actually in the courtroom or?
No.
Okay.
No. I have my own office. I'm in private practice.
Okay.
So people actually have to, what they call stipulate to me. They have to choose to come to me. They don't just get sent.
I see, okay. Now is it possible that, well, let's do it this way. What would a typical family look like? Let's say I was going to end up coming to you as my special master, which I guess means also my ex-husband would,
Right.
And my kids. What would lead up to our coming to see you?
Generally, special mastering involves high conflict families.
Okay.
So most of the times what you have are cases where there's a family that's been in and out of the court system for a long time.
Okay.
And everyone knows that they're high conflict, so that there have been a lot of conflicts in this family. And either they're tired of it and they want to get out of the court system, or sometimes the court system really tries hard to get them out of that system and somewhere where they can get more help.
So kind of like the court system is saying, we're really sick of you guys being here all the time. Go deal with someone who can give you the attention you need.
Yeah, that often happens, yeah. That's often the case.
Now, this is a very novel program, isn't it? I think you're in Santa Clara County primarily, right, in California, and my understanding is that it's sort of a pilot program and that it's a model that other cities are looking at to see if it's a viable program. Is that correct?
Yes, I think Santa Clara became the model. Santa Clara and Marin County were the two that pretty much first started this program.
Okay, and how long has it been in place now?
Well, we started doing this informally in about 1990, and there were 2 or 3 therapists who were trying it out for one of the judges in family court.
Okay.
And we tried it out for about 1.5 years, 2 years, and then we started doing it more formally in the sense that there were more therapists who became involved.
Mm-hmm. And so has it been successful?
It's been very successful.
What are some of, if you have sort of success stories just generally of families? I mean, they come in very high conflict. If they're coming to you all the time to settle their disputes, though, I'm not sure how, do they ever graduate from your program? Are they ever at a point where they really don't need you anymore, where they can sort of make their own decisions?
There's a lot of times that happens. That's basically my goal, is to get them out of my office and find a way for them to handle their own disputes. And oftentimes that works. I guess there's part of this for me is that sometimes the chemistry doesn't gel between me and the clients, and sometimes it might with another special master, so sometimes that happens. We might switch, but I think all of the goal for all of us, I think, is to try to get them out of our office.
Now, if you said that sometimes that they normally have to agree to come to you,
Right.
But we're talking about families that sounds like couples that can never agree on anything. So can the court actually order them? Because I know courts can order therapy and everything else. Can they order them to come in and have a special master?
My understanding, Anne, is that if the court orders you to a special master, you really aren't a special master.
What are you then?
You're acting more as an evaluator.
Okay, I see. But are you still getting involved then? I'm thinking of
if
cases
I were going
where
to do
you
that,
want
that's what would happen. But I've had that happen very rarely, and I think it's going to happen less and less because I gather that the state has made some rulings recently that say you really can't do it without being stipulated.
Okay.
That a judge can't give his powers to somebody else unless the people say that
I guess
that's
that makes
possible.
sense.
Yeah.
Now, what about in terms of if you were to compare a couple, a high conflict couple that had a special master versus one that didn't? I mean, in the end, they're still going to end up going before a judge. So what are the advantages, aside from sort of alleviating some of the burden to the courts?
I think there's a time factor. Usually people can get to me quicker than they can get to court. I
Okay.
mean, sometimes within a matter of, you know, a few days or even the same day, depending on the issue. Whereas with the court, you're waiting sometimes months to get an issue heard. I think the other thing, like I said, is that it's so much more informal that people often feel relaxed enough to start dealing with issues that they don't deal with otherwise. The other thing that I've found is that, and it really works differently with different families, but there are some families where I've found that I can just work with them and I almost never have to make decisions. And
So you're doing more of a therapeutic
I'm doing more,
role, or
it's in many ways
communication
more
skills?
communication skills, things like that. And it's kind of interesting because, don't forget, these are high conflict families.
Right.
And oftentimes what I find is that if they get to me really far down the road, they've been in the court system for 7 or 8 years, they're tired. So what they're looking for is just some other way to deal with this. The other thing that I found is that even works in some cases where I have to make decisions more frequently, because what happens is that they feel so relieved that somebody's making the decisions that somehow there are less decisions to be made. So.
And then when you have these couples that are in there with you, you also see the kids, you said. Is that right?
Well, let me put it this way. When I work with these cases, I like to meet the whole family. I want to know what I'm working with. That's basically why I meet the kids, unless I have a family with older, like teenagers, in which case I'm going to want to get those kids involved because they have a lot of impact from what happens with their parents.
So what I'm wondering then is, what do you hear from these kids? I mean, I can only imagine if you have sort of that relationship with the kids, and especially if they know that you're someone who can order their parents to whatever it is they're doing stop or to do certain things differently. Is there sort of an overriding theme? Because I have to imagine that we hear from these kids is, we just make my parents stop
Get
fighting.
my parents to stop fighting.
Is that it?
That's the major theme. I hear everything from, even with high conflict families too, gee, I wish my parents would get back together. I still hear that even from particularly from the younger ones. But almost across the board, they want their parents to stop fighting.
So do you feel that there's something you can identify as being sort of one of the major factors then, that parents who are in divorce, in the cases you see, which are the very high conflict ones, you know, is there sort of a number one thing that you need to say to them? Do this thing differently. Don't do that. I mean, you can't just say to people, don't fight because it upsets your kids. Is there sort of, is it, okay, guys, sit down and learn how to communicate? Is it, what?
It's really a hard question because it really varies.
From family to
Family to family. There are some families where communication helps. There are some families where what really helps is to just get them totally separated so they never see each other. I've found that works sometimes. I'll just see them separately and never get them together, and somehow they feel divorced for the first time in forever.
You know, that's an important thing. I know a lot of times when I talk to people who are in the family law system, they say, I just want it to be over. And they want a sense of closure and a sense of this is done with. And because they have to keep interacting, because they have kids, they never get that sense. So is that part of why they're still always fighting, is trying to make that break? And
sometimes it's trying to make that break, and sometimes there are families where the conflict is what they've been doing forever, and it's just hard to change patterns. And they don't know how to get out of it. They don't know what to do to stop it. And sometimes just literally totally separating them is enough to get them to stop.
What if they have kids they have to exchange? Don't they have to see each other? What do you do in those
Not
cases?
necessarily. I mean, it really depends.
Okay.
I mean, I've seen families, even, for example, half-time custody families where they're doing what's normally called joint custody, where a parent will do week on, week off, and never communicate.
So that's actually a way to separate them but still allow them both to equally, or as much as they can, equally parent.
Parent, right. And it works for the kids. I don't think it works as well as when the parents communicate, but it certainly works better than when the parents are in conflict.
Now that's interesting because I know that there was a perception, at least for quite a while, that parents who are in high conflict, the kids had to be mostly with one parent because being exposed to high conflict was so bad for these kids, which we agree it is. But it sounds like you're saying that there are creative ways that parents can still co-parent even when they're high conflict to sort of work around that and protect the kids. Is that what I'm hearing?
I think that can happen. I've seen it happen from time to time. I think that what a lot of the therapists will tell you who've worked with this is actually contra to what I'm saying right now. I think there are a lot of them that really believe that if there's a high conflict family, you don't set up a joint custody situation because just in the fact of going back and forth, it seems to be more difficult for kids. A lot of the cases I'm talking about, there were cases where the parents have been doing it for a long time, even though they've been in high conflict, and somehow you don't want to switch the kids. The kids don't really want to move, so you try to set it up so that the conflict is lessened.
And I bet you sometimes they've just been in the thick of it for so long that even simple solutions that are obvious to you as an outside person just never dawn on them.
No, that's very true. And I mean, it's true for anything you're doing, whether it's special mastering or mediating. I mean, what I've found is that what happens with people is that they get locked into a position and they can't see anything else. And just giving them several other alternatives is often enough to allow them to find some other way to deal with things.
And again, because you can take the time to be their sort of private judge, you can actually look and explore these alternatives where a regular judge who sees them once every 3 months could not.
Right, or I can do things like set up situations where they'll try out different co-parenting arrangements to see what works rather than just setting it down there and then saying bye, hope it works.
And are they usually pretty motivated by the point that they're, with you to try these things? To just come down to it? Sometimes. And sometimes you have to tell them, do it.
Right.
We have about a minute left before we go to break, and I'm wondering if very briefly you can touch on two really big issues. So I'm throwing this at you like this for 1 minute. But we hear a lot about both parental alienation and false allegations of abuse, and you always hear that in the context of very high conflict families. So I'm assuming that if it's out there as much as some would say, you'd be seeing it. What's your experience of these things? Are they really problems? Does it happen?
Yes, I think it happens. My whole reading on parent alienation is that it takes two parents to alienate kids. So I think you're dealing with a systems problem no matter who's alienated. In terms of the abuse, I see it happen. I don't usually get those cases because I've made it fairly clear to the court that I don't want to handle them.
Okay.
And the judges are pretty clear with what therapists want to deal with, what problems.
And is that just because it's just so, I mean, it's got to be a nightmare to deal with,
It's
I would
a nightmare
think.
to deal with, and it's really not my specialty. I don't really deal with abuse situations. So my trying to sort that out is much more difficult than sorting out other things.
Well, that makes sense. Okay, we will be right back after this break.
Great.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
I'm a dad and a member of FREE, the Father's Rights and Equality Exchange. Most dads out there would love to spend more time with their kids, to be a real part of their lives. FREE wants to change the notion that all divorced dads are irresponsible, because most of us are dads who are responsible, and we're working for a chance to share the parenting. If you want to learn more, please call us at 1-500-4DADS. That's 1-500-4DADS.
Because remember, fathers are parents too. Right, Dad?
You got it.
Welcome back to Fathers Are Parents Too. We're here with Family Law Special Master Laurie Williams, and we have some questions from the audience for Ms. Williams. Yes.
Hi, Laurie. I'm a recently divorced father of 3 small children, and I have definite high conflict with my ex-spouse regarding a number of issues. I'm wondering how your services differ from either court-sponsored or private mediation, and I'm wondering if the parents make some sort of commitment to agree to go along with what you suggest to try something out, and whether your decisions have legal weight, and if so, how much. And lastly, I wonder...
You want to ask those all at once?
The last one's easy. How much do you cost?
Okay, I'll start with that one. Okay, I charge $150 an hour, and I think that's fairly standard. I think it ranges anywhere from $150 to $200, depending on who's doing it. In terms of whether the decisions, if I have to make them, are legally binding, yes, they are. The way the process works is that if I have to make a decision, I will put out a court order, which the parents then have usually 20 days to contest. If it's contested, then you go to a hearing in front of the judge after having a settlement conference with me first.
I'd like just to comment, some people may sort of have sticker shock when they hear $150 to $200 an hour,
Right.
But if you think of what it would cost for 2 attorneys to fight over the same issues for you, it's really a bargain.
It's a bargain if you look at it in those terms. It's
Absolutely.
expensive if you look at it in different terms. I've also been known to slide on the fee, but I shouldn't say that, right? The other thing you had asked is what makes it different from a standard mediation type service. And I think for me anyway, I really try to do a lot of mediation when I'm doing this. So in that sense, it's similar. I think the difference is that when people can't mediate an issue, then I can actually make the decision. I can actually write a court order.
Do you find that as people go through the process, you do that less and less for each family because they start realizing that if they don't reach a decision, you're going to make one for them?
Generally, that's true. Usually the other thing that happens is that if it gets contested once and it goes to court, they usually don't do it after that. Partly because oftentimes if it's contested and the judge makes a ruling in favor of the person who's not contesting, then the person who's contesting it has to pay all the fees.
Oh.
So that can be a pretty heavy hit.
Especially if what the judge rules is what you recommend
what I
to start
recommend,
with.
right.
Absolutely. We have another question for you. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, Laurie, I'm wondering how widespread the special master system is. What states have now adopted it, for example?
I don't know of any other states that are actually doing it. I had heard that there was one of the states back east. It may have been Wisconsin, but I'm not positive. Wisconsin, Michigan, one of those that is starting to try it out. Those are the only 2 states that I know. And the other reality for me is that most of the special mastering is being done in Northern California. There's not a whole lot of it being done in Southern California that I know of.
Now you mentioned this was sort of, or we discussed that this was a pilot program. Have there been any studies yet to sort of determine how successful it's been?
The first 2 years we did this, so this is back probably 93, 94. What we did was study about 200 cases. That's about as many as were sent to special masters in that first couple of year period. And we took how many court appearances were in the year before they came into the special master program as opposed to what happened when they were in the special master program. And it went down from something like 200 or 300 court appearances for these families down to about 20.
Wow.
So that's the only way we've had of measuring any kind of success.
Well, that sounds very successful, and for the families as well, even just in terms of sheer cost. It's
I
gotta
think
be
so,
there.
although I don't know how. I mean, I can't tell you how much the people have liked the process. I know with my own cases how much some of them have liked it or not liked it, but I can't tell you overall.
Now, what if there are viewers who are in other states, because this show goes out across the country, who are saying, wow, what a great idea, how can we get our courts to do this? Who would people in other court systems in other states contact to find out about the model you're using and its success and how to implement it? Do you know? Or?
I think that probably the best person to talk to would be the head of Family Court Services in Santa Clara, who's Sandra Clark.
Okay. So they could call Directory Assistance for, that would be San Jose, California?
It would be San Jose, California. It would be Family Court Services. I think they could find it that way.
That would make sense. We have another question for you.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, can you tell me what percentage of fathers want to have a 50% split, and how the special master, and then just give up because of the court system, and how the special master system maybe has helped these fathers in recent times?
I don't have any statistics. I don't have any idea. And I think part of the reason for that is that the only cases that we see are the really highly conflicted cases where you've obviously got fathers who are very involved and want to be involved. We don't usually see the other cases. Does it happen? I know it happens a lot. I've known men that I've worked with just singly as fathers who have walked away because of whatever was going on in the case, whether it was alienation or whatever, and they've just given up and walked off. So.
Now, just a comment on that, which is that my experience is that then society looks at those guys and says, look, they're abandoning their kids, not realizing that often they're walking away because it's so painful or because they believe they're doing the right thing to get the kids out of the conflict.
I think that a lot of them walk away because they want to get the kids out of the conflict. I've seen that a lot.
Now, in terms of your own experience with these clients, though, and this guest asked about fathers who want 50% custody, is your experience that the guys that are in there hanging in more often just want to take custody away or get 50% custody? Or, because my experience is sometimes, in fact, a lot of the times, they're not even looking for 50%, they're just looking to stay involved. And
yeah, I think that's very true. I think there are a lot of them who are looking to just stay involved. And a lot of the way I work, and as I said before, we're all different in how we work. If I can get a family to work on a joint custody situation, I'll try to work that out. But that means lessening the conflict in most cases, or trying to find some way so that there is no conflict. But that doesn't always work. And sometimes what you have is just a father who just wants to see the kids on a standard every other weekend, and there's a mom who doesn't want him to see it at all.
And that's why I asked.
Those are really kind of, those cases in many ways are very sad to me, because the kids need those fathers. And I've seen a lot of children who suffer a lot when fathers walk away from it or just leave for whatever the reason.
And see, and the reason I even asked that was because there's sort of this perception that dads who are in there fighting, it's about control, and that the father's movement, quote unquote, is about taking custody away, and that's really not what it's about.
I don't think that's necessarily what it's about, although I think there's almost always a control issue involved in this kind of thing.
On
I don't
both
think
sides,
you can
probably. That's why they're with you, isn't it? You know?
Well, I don't think you can have a control issue without both sides.
I suppose that's true. Let's see.
But I think that the other question was whether it had helped in terms of 50-50. I don't know whether I can answer the question other than in cases that I've seen, and I think there are some cases that have moved that way because I've been involved.
Okay, we have time for one more question, and we have one. Yes.
Yes, can you explain what one should look for in a special master when shopping around?
Oh boy, that's an interesting question. I think a lot of it would be find out how many cases they've had, find out how long they've been involved in cases. You might want to find out whether people who, usually we have a time period set up, a year, 18 months, 2 years, how many people have gone back to that person for a second round. I think that says something about him. The other thing that I strongly suggest with people is go talk to these people and find out whether you actually get along with them.
That's going to be really critical. If
I
you're going to
think
let
it's-
someone come into your family like that, it has to be someone you're comfortable with and that you trust.
I don't think it's a bad thing to ask for things like what their biases are either, assuming they'll give them to you, of course.
And that brings up a really interesting question, because a lot of people, I think, believe that people who are involved in the family law profession, judges, special masters, mediators, shouldn't have biases. And everybody has biases, and my experience is that it's the ones who admit that they have them. You know, I once worked with a mediator, in fact, in family court services in your county, and he said, I have a bias. I know I have this bias. That's how I was brought up. But I always try to overcome that when I'm working with a case.
Right.
And he was fabulous. And I respected that a lot more than someone who would say, I have no biases, because how could you not?
We're all biased at some level for something. And you're right. I think if you can, I think the only way to overcome that is to recognize that it's there and then try to deal with it, whatever it is.
And has your experience been, have you actually seen cases where, and what would someone do if it was clear they were dealing with someone with a large bias that wouldn't acknowledge they had this bias, that had a blind spot? Is there something you would recommend to someone?
I don't know. It's a really difficult issue because once you've signed up with somebody as a special master, you're kind of stuck at least until the time period is over. So I don't think you can do anything other than to raise the issue with the person. I guess that's what I would try to do, or maybe go to another therapist and have that therapist help you deal with the special master. I've done that in a couple of cases myself.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now we have just a few seconds left, and why don't you tell people how they could contact you if they would like you to be their special master, if you'd like to, if they're in your area, or maybe even you're open to calls from people in other areas who'd like to know how to set this up. I'm not saying you have to give your phone number out, but you can if you'd like.
I don't mind giving my phone number out. It's a voicemail, so I never answer it anyway. It's 408-436-8966. That's the number of my office.
And that's in Santa
it's
Clara?
in San Jose.
San Jose, California.
Yeah. I'm on Technology Drive in San Jose, near the airport.
And you're listed, so they could
And
also
I'm
just
listed.
and again, if they want to learn how to set the program up, they could call Family Court Services in San Jose, California.
In San Jose. They could call me. I mean, I've been pretty much involved, and I could get them to the people they need to talk to, too.
Okay, well, thank you, Laurie, so much for being here. And
You're
will you come
welcome.
back sometime?
I'd love to come back.
Thank you. And thank you all for being here. And join us next time here on Fathers Are Parents Too.